Hi, my name is Caleb Nestor, and I am a junior here at Vanguard. I am a veteran of the Marine Corps, and I am 24. I am a theology major with a emphasis in pastoral leadership. Outside of school, I go to Coast City Church down in Oceanside, California. I have the awesome opportunity to intern with Pastor Doug Reed there and serve in the young adults ministry there, where I get to just get to serve with my friends. It's honestly such a cool opportunity there. And then here at school, I'm just a student, just a commuter, nothing crazy. And this is my story. I was born in Orlando, Florida, in June of 1998, and I have one older brother who is 2.5 years older than me. His name is Josh, and he is a Marine currently. My dad is from Pittsburgh, and my mom is from Maine. They both moved down to Florida like a long time ago. I was raised in Florida. I was homeschooled until I was in high school. I was raised in church, did Royal Rangers as a little kid. I was never very athletic, and I'm still not very athletic now. I just like to read and play video games. And growing up in church, um, it was kind of, looking back on it, having a relationship with God for me. As cliche as it sounds, it wasn't a personal thing. It was, how do you say no to something when pretty much from as young as you can remember, it's presented to you as a really life or death scenario. When you're 8, you don't want to go to hell. So um, that was my upbringing, and my parents are wonderful people, and I have such great relationships with them now. And I am who I am because I've been loved really well. I don't want to for a second think that I'm a self-made anything, really. But as wonderful as they weren't great at being married. So for me, the difficulty in my faith and growing up, and part of my story, is just the conflict at home, the anger, the constant fighting, and just all that stuff really shaped, I think, my view toward church. Um, I grew up with parents that were involved in ministry, but then at home there was this constant tension, this quick to anger mentality, and that frustrated me, shaped me in more ways than one. But to make it sound like this really negative thing, I think would be really selfish. I was super lucky, growing up. I was so blessed, and have just it's kind of hard to like sit here and look into like a camera and be like, here's what's so great about my upbringing. But just to be simple, God has blessed me greatly. That's really all there is to it. I don't have anything to boast about. In high school, I was a pretty average kid. Just went to school. I was smart, got good grades, and I really leaned into that because playing sports was fun, but I was just never very good at it. When I was a little kid, I was about 8 years old. I saw a commercial on TV for the Marine Corps, and it was, I can't even remember what it was specifically, but at that moment, like, I knew that I wanted to be a Marine, and not really for any reason deeper than just the uniforms looked really cool. And so as I got older, I had that goal in mind and had my sights set on going to the Naval Academy to be an officer, to go to college, get a degree, be a Marine. Um, and then when I was 16, I came home from a water polo tournament, and this was the summer before my senior year of high school. Um, and my parents told my brother and I that they were getting a divorce, and that you know it's kind of hard, impromptu, like spur of the moment, to sit here and say how that impacted me, because frankly, like I'm still dealing with that today. I think that we are so quick to package all of our experiences up in a nutshell and say, like, this is how it affected me, this is how it made me feel. But the truth is that's still a pain that you have to take to Jesus. You encounter people in church that have wonderful families, that have, whenever they hang out, they don't have to do Christmas Eve here and then Christmas morning there, and just all the BS that you have to deal with. And I kind of went into a period of just spiraling downhill. I didn't do anything crazy, but it was just whatever was a fix, whatever made me feel like okay. If it was getting drunk, if it was smoking weed, whatever, like nothing, I'm not gonna act like that makes me like hardcore or anything, but it was really sad, honestly. It was just whatever helped me feel okay for a moment. And looking back on it, even in that, there were so many people that had so much patience for me, that loved me, and didn't condemn me for whatever it was that I was doing, however serious or however minor. And when I didn't get accepted into the Naval Academy, I went into a period of depression. I graduated high school, and my closest friends were going to the University of Florida on an ROTC scholarship to go into the Army, or they were going to the University of South Florida to be engineers, and I was at home. I did nothing really with my life. I just ate ice cream and watched TV while my dad worked, and felt useless. I felt like I had no value, because for me, even to this day, like I struggle with being an achiever, with thinking like, if I'm not accomplishing things, where's my value? And eventually one day I decided that I was going to enlist, because I couldn't stay where I was at, and if I continued the path that I was on, I just didn't see my life getting any better. So in January of 2017, I went to boot camp in Parris Island, South Carolina, and I originally wanted to be a machine gunner because I thought that was hardcore and it was super cool, but I was porky and couldn't do pull-ups. And to this day, post Marine Corps, I still suck at pull-ups. And so I ended up being what's called a red patcher. It's just logistics. And I went to South Carolina and North Carolina for training, and then I ended up getting stationed in Camp Pendleton, California, down near Oceanside. And I was stationed here in August of 2017. And over the course of my time in the Marines, I had some of the most boring experiences of my life, some of the most stressful. I made some of the best friends, met some of probably the worst people. I had amazing leaders, and I screwed up a lot. And I joined the Marines because I didn't want to go to college and just end up, doing lines of coke and acting like a freak or whatever. And then I joined the Marines, and I just, for the first several months, ended up spending most weekends just crushing beers, seeing how drunk I could get with my friends, because that's pretty much what you do in the barracks. That's kind of a unanimous experience for most Marines. And I came home in Christmas of 2017, and I remember seeing all of my friends and everything that they were doing with their lives, and it was just like, the only thing that I was accomplishing was drinking on the weekends, and it was, it was cool, but I felt like a loser. And I started going to church. I started going to North Coast in Vista, and one of the things that I've wrestled with in my walk is you hear all of these testimonies of people that have this just one miraculous experience, and then they're just like set on fire for God, and they spend years. And I can't say that was my experience. For me, it was just this gradual dying to myself, and unfortunately that's just because I'm arrogant and stubborn, and it took me a long time to see the uselessness and the pain and the suffering that I was bringing on myself because of the decisions that I was making, whether it was pornography or alcohol. It didn't really matter. It wasn't an overnight transformation, but instead it's just been this long gradual process of being loved through and sanctified and changed, and not really through myself. I wish I could look straight at the camera and tell whoever's watching like exactly that moment, but I can't. And I think that's been a very, very intentional thing, because that would be, in a way, easier, and not to undermine what people that do have that experience. It's hard to put words to that process. But anyway, I got saved. I would say I really made the decision to follow Christ in January of 2018. And while I was in the Marines, I had the opportunity to go to South America, on a detachment, I guess would be the best word for it, on the USS Somerset. And we got to sail down to South America, to Chile and port in Valparaiso for a week, and experience all of that. And that was such a cool experience. Looking back on it, and I struggled with the feeling that my service didn't really mean a whole lot. And I think to this day I still wrestle with that a little bit, because when I was a kid, I watched, on the news, you see Marines fighting in Fallujah and Ramadi and Marja, and Sangin, and all these places. And I spent 4 years, and I had amazing experiences, and I got to deploy and see some cool countries in the Middle East and do that stuff, but was never really in harm's way. And so being 20 years old and having some 50-something-year-old guy thank you and offer you a beer or something for your service, and it's just you feel like, I don't know what the point is. I didn't really do anything. And I wish I could say that, well, this person said this and that made it all better. But for me, God really worked through that, where this dream that I had for my whole life, and I will always be proud of my service, and I'll always be thankful of getting to be a Marine and being a Marine. But there was this dissatisfaction with where I was at, this feeling of, this was my dream for my whole life, and this was supposed to have this deep meaning. It was supposed to be fulfilling, and it was deeply flawed. But at the same time, a huge blessing. It shaped my character and made me a man. And I decided that the Marine Corps wasn't what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. Looking back on the 4 years that I was in, it I don't know if I've ever laughed that hard. I don't know if I've ever been challenged that much. And I don't think I ever would have experienced any of the things that I have if it wasn't for it. And it was such a blessing again. But I thought that I was going to get out of the Marines and I was going to go into business and I was going to, have a comfortable life and be in charge of myself because, again, like I'm proud and I like to think that I know better and I can lead myself and I can be in charge. Um, and I got out and I was going to school for business. I was going to Cal State San Marcos. And God started this process of calling me into ministry where, I felt that this, like, we shouldn't want to be a martyr, but it's like, I call myself a Christian, but if you look at my life, it's just selfish and arrogant and critical and narcissistic and insecure. And then you look at the disciples, and as flawed as they were, they met a risen Jesus, and they're willing to get burnt alive just to simply illuminate a garden party in Rome, or just get eaten alive because they're willing to say, like, you can't do that because Jesus is Lord and Caesar is not. And I looked at my life and I realized that I lacked just any guts, any meaning. I felt like such a coward. Like I was hiding behind my own intellect instead of having some integrity and living my life for the gospel. And not in this cliche sense, because I one of the things that I've experienced while I'm here is people talk about like the Vanguard bubble this and the Vanguard bubble that, and the truth is like the real world sucks. I mean, it's great like being an independent adult, but the moment that you leave the Vanguard bubble, like you realize how desperately people need Jesus. Because the real world is very rewarding, but it's difficult. And I say all of that not out of like frustration, but there's just such a immaturity here sometimes, and I don't say that to be judgmental or critical, because God knows I'm in need of grace and I'm in no position to ever cast judgment on anybody. But this university has just been such a blessing to me. I'm not here by accident. I'm not here because I don't have any other marketable skill, and I'm not here because I grew up in church and it just made sense. Like I did everything that I could to ignore people that told me that I was going to be a pastor, because the thing that I was really good at when they were telling me I was going to be a pastor was stacking empty beer cans. I'm not qualified in any way, shape, or form. But I don't want to sit here and just shake my fist at a screen, but this world is hurting and is longing for people that take what they have seriously. There is just such a need within this local community, just within Orange County itself, just within our state, within our country. And I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Like I didn't take my life seriously at all. I'm not trying to act like I have years of life experience and I'm so wise, but we were all called for such a time as this. And all of your garbage, baggage, all of your pain, like all of your brokenness, like doesn't disqualify you. And I really believe that the Lord is asking for a people that are willing to die to themselves. I think that I really believe that it's not just about the authority that we have in Jesus' name, but it's, are we willing to go forth and maybe even suffer, and maybe take the gospel seriously enough to lay down our lives. I I didn't want to sit down here and like preach at anybody. Um, you know, Lord knows, like, sometimes it's just trying to get a chapel requirement. And that's okay. Um, I don't think that it's this big emotional. It's just a question, like, am I willing? Am I willing to surrender? You know, all of that being said, like, I didn't have my life figured out when God called me, and I'm like feeling like I'm kind of searching for a landing here, and I'm just wandering awkwardly looking for it. But really, the heart of where I'm at is that Jesus is completely confident in his ability to meet you where you're at, and the Holy Spirit is absolutely sufficient to care for you in your brokenness and in your pain and in whatever you're going through. And in those moments where we're crying out to him, I believe that we have to trust and know that he was there ready and waiting before we asked, and he cares more than we do. And I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to sit here and do this. And yeah, I whoever's watching, I appreciate you listening to my rambling, trying to figure out where I'm going with this. But I pray that the Lord would bless you and keep you, and I pray that the Lord would cause his face to shine upon you, that he would turn his face toward you, and he'd grant you peace, and that you would know that you are loved and you are unique, and that you are valuable and you are cherished and you are wanted and you are loved.